Now that we know a little bit about the basics of a brush, how to create one, how to make it additive or subtractive, how to link them together so you can get hallways between them, what I want to do today is I'm going to show you some other tools that you might need to use, especially if you don't have any 3D modeling skills. If you have access to a 3D program and you can do in Max or Maya or Blender and you can build some rather complex shapes, that's the way to go. But there are going to be times when you don't do that, you don't have those skills, you don't have that program, but you need a shape that's a little bit more than just a box or a cylinder or a sphere or a set of stairs. You want something a little bit more complex than that. This is where the geometry editing brush comes in. So let's switch over to that. Up here in our modes, we've got place, we've got painting, which is vertex painting for doing textures. We've got landscaping, we've got foliage, which will paint grass and trees and stuff on a landscape. And we have the geometry editing tool. And the first thing you'll notice when you select it is things change. All right, so it's automatically, it's blue. To go back to this, it turns with the yellow lines. Come back over to this, it turns blue. And what you can do is you can click on individual parts of this thing. Basically, it turns it into its components. It's either a surface or it's an edge, which is really hard to select there. It's actually, I got it the first time, but you usually don't. Or you have the vertex, and the vertex and the edge. The vertex is like the atom. It's the smallest possible unit on an object. An edge is a line that runs between. See, it's hard to click. It's a line that runs between two vertices. So that's what an edge is. And then a polygon or a surface is either 3 or 4 vertices with edges associated with them. Now this is a 4-sided object. Each of those sides is a square, and that's kind of the way it is. You want to make sure, by the way, up here when you're doing the kinds of things that we're going to be doing, you want to make sure that your coordinate system up here is set to world and not set to local. You basically, I may run into that here. Sometimes when you click on something and you do it, this will switch and you got to kind of keep an eye on it. And I'm pretty sure I got it right, but it has to be in world, which is what that is, as opposed to local, which is what that little box looks like. So I'm going to keep that in world. All right, now when I do that, you can see I've got extrude, I have edit, I have extrude, I have brush clip, I have pen, and I have lathe. And right now, only 3 of those are active: edit, extrude, and pen. So let's go through those. Edit is the default setting. That's kind of the way it works. You'll also see down below here I have 8 buttons: create, flip, triangulate, turn, delete, split, optimize, and weld. And I'll go through those and show you what those do. Delete will do pretty much what you think it'll do. It will delete that face, which I don't really want to do. Flip will turn it inside out. Remember, we can see the outside of the surface. We can't see the inside of the surface. If I flip that surface, that polygon, we'll then not see it from this angle, and we will be able to go inside that box and turn around and look at it. That's kind of what the subtraction tool does for you automatically. Triangulate will take that polygon here, this 4-sided object, and split it into 2 triangles, which I don't want to do. The other one here is optimize. Optimize usually doesn't do a whole lot because in this particular case, it's about as optimal as it's going to get. It's a minimum of 4 vertices with their edges. It's a single polygon. It's not multi-sided, which we call an n-gon. It's not an n-gon. It is only a 4-sided object, and that's about as optimized as you're going to get. Now, up here under extrude, it says here only works with the local coordinate system, so I do have it backwards. Okay, I'm going to click that button that says, no, I'll leave that open just in case I forget next time too. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change that. And now you can see it had flipped over in some of the things I was doing. Now if I grab this, try it again. It automatically converts it, I guess. And my mouse is gone. Okay. So you can see I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on here. It looks like it's really kind of messed up. So let's see if I can back that up to where it was. Control Z is how you back things up. You really have to be careful when you're in the editing tools. Your mouse, at times, if you think you're away from something, you actually are grabbing it. It's kind of, Unreal can be a little weird sometimes, so kind of watch out for that. Just, you can Control Z to go back if you need to go back and do something. All right, so extrude, I'm in the local up over here. what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that and I'm just going to pull it forward like this. What it's doing then, it's creating all those new polygons, and I now have a shape that's longer than it was. I can grab this one right here, and as long as I have Extrude selected, I can just pull this right out like that. And then I can come over here and I can grab this one, and I can pull it this way. And I'll maybe do a little bit shorter one. And then I'll take this one and I'll go that way. And you can see I've got what amounts to maybe a hallway or something started. And then if I turn that back to edit, then I'm not going to accidentally select something and extrude it. And if I come back to just a general thing, you can actually see what it is that you have. All right. Now I can, this is a much more difficult premise than when you're trying to do an internal hallway. If I had to create another shape on the inside of that, it would be really difficult to do. If I try to click hollow, you can see it actually just does away with my entire thing. Yeah, I can get back to that. So this is a little bit more difficult to work with. This almost requires that you work with additive and subtractive boxes, because if you go to additive, it just takes it back to what it was, which was the original starting shape, and you get to do it all over again. So I'm just going to leave that one here like this, and that's basically how that one would work. All right, now the other ones that are in there, the pen tool allows you to go in and create some custom shapes. We'll come back to that one, I think, a little bit later on in a different video. I think that's probably the best way to handle that one right now. So all of this basically works. This is your editing. I can take that, I can turn off that and come back to your basic shape, and I can delete the whole thing. I can bring out another BSP, say bring out cone, and I can switch over to that mode, and I can start doing the same things all over again. So if I'm in local, I can click on extrude, and then I can take something and I can pull it out, and I can start to create some basic shapes that way. I want to make sure at this point, before I do anything else, I don't want to extrude again, so I'm just going to take and pull it back. And all of my tools work. If I switch back and forth between rotate, what I can do here is I can grab these. Now I want to, rather than do local, I want to make sure that I'm coming back and doing world. When you're editing points, it's something that you have to remember is the difference between local and world. And this one up here, if I grab that vertex up there, probably is a good way of doing it. If I zoom around and look at this thing, you'll notice that the pivot points up there are kind of aligned with the world. If I change that to local, sometimes what happens, especially if you have multiple points selected, when you're trying to deal with something locally, what it'll do is it'll move each of them based upon their local arrangement, their local settings, whether or not something is aligned to the world or not. So a lot of times when you have, say on a sphere, you've got vertices that go around a sphere, they're all aligned to the middle of the sphere. So each vertex draws its alignment from the middle of where a sphere happens to be. So let's get out of this one and delete that. And let's go put a sphere out there so we can see that. Boom. All right. So I've got this thing in here. So each of these vertices you can see. Notice where the central point is on that one. My pivot point is right in the middle of this thing. And yet each one of these vertices that you see out around it, okay, all have their own local positions, and those local positions are not necessarily aligned, there you go, not necessarily aligned with the overall model. And yet if I change this over here to world, what happens is those things tend to all be aligned. You notice that the arrows are all facing in the same direction no matter which way I go. And that's a big thing that you're going to have to watch when you're editing things and moving vertices around, whether you're in a 3D modeling program or whether you're in a game engine, that the difference between world and local is huge when you're trying to move something around. So your world, if I come back here on to world, my world alignment is down here in the bottom. X is to the right, Y is to the left, and Z is up and down. When I go to local and switch on that, now it's dependent upon the individual object that I'm selecting. And it's going to move independent of where everything else in the world happens to be aligned. So if I've got two things that I would like to move in the same direction, then I kind of want to make sure that I'm switched to world. That way I know that they are moving together. And they're going to go and they're going to continue on the same path together, as opposed to them trying to move individually on their own. So watch what you're doing when you're working with these things. You're really going to see when we start working in a very large world and you're trying to move pieces around. World is generally where we always stay. We only switch over to local when it's absolutely necessary. All right, so that basically is how we can do some editing. I will quite frankly tell you that it's probably in your best interest to get your hands on models from a 3D program rather than try and do it in here. It's one of those parts of the program. It's been here since day one, the ability to edit brushes, but it's not really meant to do much more than to do large blocking out of areas. Let me find you an example here. All right, here's an example from the website. And you can see basically what they use their brushes for. This is the way the world is going to look, but they need to see what it's going to look like mapped out in terms of size and scalability and things like that. They want to know what the overall playable space is going to look like. So long before they ever do all those final models, these are all individual pieces that are built in a 3D program, then imported as assets, and then placed where they're supposed to go. The ones over here on the left, however, those are all just roughed in brushes. And it's like, I know I'm going to have a column. Let me put a big box there. I'm going to have another column over here, put a big box there. And let me get a sense of how tall this is going to be. Let me run through it and see how far apart those things need to be. And I can say, all right, now that I have an idea of what my space is going to look like, I can go back to my 3D program, build those things, and then take those pieces. And then as I import them as assets and I place them in this environment, I can go ahead and delete that column. I don't need this brush anymore because I now have a model that I'm placing there. Same thing over here. Same thing with all this back over there. The back wall or the side walls I've already created. I'll come in and I'll leave them. In some cases, what you'll see is they actually leave, like big walls or floors will stay in there. That can stay. A floor can stay. I can put a texture down. I can put other things down on top of it if I need to. And it does have some built-in collision, so I know I can run around the level. I'm not going to fall through the floor. Unlike these assets, which have to have collision added to them, this brush already has it, so my floor is already in place. So this is basically what we use it for. And if you actually looked at a finished game, I think you would find that outside of a landscape, very few elements of environments are actually brushes. Most of them are only used to map things out ahead of time. So what you need to know about them is fairly limited, but at least know that you can, if you need to, go in and create something and customize it if you need to, and then you can put a texture on it. It's like anything else. It's got textures, it's got collision. You can put whatever you want to on it to turn it into however you want it to look. So that's what editing geometry will do for you.